Hello there, my stamping friends. Susan here with Pumpkin Hill Stampers, and I have a new Stampin' Show and Tell to share with you. Today I'm going to be crafting with the Pretty Flowers embossing folder, the Iconic Dies set, and I'm going to be using Peaceful Moments for my sentiments on my projects. I have 4 project ideas to share with you that all feature the Pretty Flowers embossing folder, and I'm going to show you 4 different ways to craft with it. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so something I love about our embossing folders is that it makes a really simple background, right? You can just pop a piece of cardstock any size into your folder as long as it's going to fit through your machine, and when you come out with it, you've got this beautiful embossed panel, right? Now that embossed panel could be used all on its own, right? Add a little ribbon or a paper ribbon, a sentiment tag, and you are good to go. Nothing more needed than just a nice, simple background. Today I'm going to show you a few different simple backgrounds. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to show you is if you take your card base, this one is 11 by 4 1/4, and I have scored it at the traditional 5 1/2, that's my midpoint, but then I scored it at 7. Okay, so there's 1.5 inches right here that I have scored off from my folded point. Now if I put this into my embossing folder and I line up that score line, okay, with the edge of my folder where my impressions are, and I fold that down and I run that through my embossing machine, I'm going to come out with this. Okay, so now I've got a section, the bottom section of my card has been embossed with the folder. I've got this flat part here that I'm going to stamp my sentiment on, and then I'm just going to make a decorative flourish to dress it up a little bit. So here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp on this one with the wishing you every happiness this special day can bring. Okay, I'm thinking a white on white card. This could be for a wedding day. It could even be for a birthday. So I'm just going to stamp that right there. So right now my card is just black and white, right? And you could leave it just like that. Nothing that says you have to do anything else. You could just run a simple ribbon there. You could run a piece of cardstock there, whatever you want to do. But I have a fun idea. Like I said, I want to use my Iconic Dies. So I have cut from my basic white, I have cut 3 of the ferns, okay, from the die set. I've cut 2 sets of these little flowers that come in a triplet on the die. I've also cut just the tiny banner from the Tasteful Labels die. I'm just going to use that as a mounting piece, and I'm going to just create a quick little embellishment to put on here. So what I'm going to do first is add my flowers. So I'm going to add my flowers to my banner. I'm going to put the big one in the middle, and then I'm going to go down in size. So I'm going to use 5 of the 6 flowers I cut. And I'm just going to let them fill in this banner. So it's kind of like a paper ribbon on this one, right? But just dressed up. Now I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to put glue dots on my ferns. I'm putting them on the front of the leaves because I'm going to tuck them behind that tag. Okay? So if you think about it like this one I'm going to pop up on dimensionals, give it a little lift and give me a little space to work behind there to put these ferns in. Okay, I'm going to put this banner underneath my sentiment. Pretty nice that that coordinates in size. Honest, I didn't plan it that way, it just worked out. Okay, so I have that, and now I've got these ferns. So I'm going to start in the middle, just going to put this under, just tuck it and tack it, right? Because I put my glue dot on top, and tuck and tack. Just go up just a little bit more. It's a little sticky there. There we go. And tuck and tack. Tuck. Come on. Behave. Alright. and tack. So what do you think? White on white, right? And just simple die cuts and that embossing folder. Pretty cool. I like it. All right, there's number one. All right, let's move on to idea number two. Okay, idea number two, we again are just going to do straight embossing with our folder. Only this time I'm going to put my basic white cardstock in my folder. This time I'm going to use this guideline, right? These little black guidelines right along our logo there. That helps me put this in so it'll be straight. Now this pattern isn't so much a problem if it doesn't go in exactly straight because it's not really a regimented pattern, but I like to use my guideline to put it in there. Anyway, good practice. So if I put that in and run it through, I end up with my embossed panel. Okay, so now what do we do next? I'm going to do a technique where I'm going to use my sponge daubers and my ink pads, and I'm going to add color to my embossed panel. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start with the yellow. Now I'm using crushed curry, and I'm just going to use my daubers to put a blush of color onto my embossed panel. Okay, so now I'm adding it to the side, the embossed side, where the image was pressed up into the cardstock. This would be a little bit harder to do on the depressed side, right, when the panel goes in. So I'm just coming around, and you can be as precise or as fluid as you want with your adding color. And if you want more, you just go back and daub a little more on there. And you can decide whether you want to do the whole panel or whether you want to leave some of the panel with white space. It's your card, your creativity, so you decide what you like. Okay? It's not my rule, it's your project. So if you try this technique, remember it's your project. So right now I've started with all the large flower imprints. Now there are smaller ones, but I want to do the green next first and see how I like it. Okay, now I'm using shaded spruce, and now I'm going to come in and try to just do the leaf that's in here. So anywhere I have a leaf, I just want to touch the leaf part. I'm trying to leave the little flowers white at the moment because I want to see how I like it with white and green and yellow. And don't worry if you get a little bit on your flower, the two-tone, right? It's not a precise technique, so give yourself a little grace when you're trying this one. Alright, so now I think I've gotten maybe all of the leaves with green. So let's take a second and look at it. Do we like the white and the green and the yellow? I think I do. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it like that with the white in there too. However, I do see a couple more big flowers that I've missed. Like here in the corner, I could do that one. Just adds a little more yellow. And this one's peeking in from the bottom. So I'm going to do that one too. Okay, and remember, if you want a little more color, like I think I maybe want a little more pigment in the center, I'm just going to come back in and add just a little extra ink. Okay, I'm good. So, two colors, I used my daubers, I did my sponging technique for my background. So now I'm going to add that. I'm going to add that to a green card base. Okay, and for this one I die cut and stamped the thank you from my stamp set, and I used the Stitch So Sweetly dies. And then I've got 3 die cut ferns in one of the flowers. This is the fuller flower from the iconic dies. So this time I think I'm going to go ahead and add, I'm just going to add that flat. I'm not going to put it up on dimensionals. A lot of times I go straight for my dimensionals, but I think when I make my sentiment tag and use the embellishment, that's going to be plenty of height for the card, and I don't want it to be too high. So I just use my liquid adhesive on the back of my embossed panel. Now I want to be careful not to pick up ink and smear it, because I just did all that, but I do flip it over and I'm just going to rub it to help adhere those two layers together, and this way I'm not rubbing ink all over my fingers or spreading it around on the cardstock that I want to remain white. Okay. Alright, let's see how that is. I think I like that. Okay, so now I've got my tag that says thank you. I am going to pop that up on dimensionals. And I'm going to put that right about here. So my idea is just to make a little bit of a flourish with these dies to kind of mimic the folder and the coloring in the back. So I've got like the ferny leaf and I've got the yellow flowers. So I'm just going to mimic those with my dies. So I don't believe that these dies and this folder were necessarily designed to be used together, but it's your project. If that's what you decide, I say go for it, and that's what I decided, so I'm going for it. Alright, I did one up. I think I did two down. Just get the glue dot underneath. Do one more here. Double fern down. And then I'm just going to use glue dot and add my flower. A couple of dots on there. Make sure it's going to stick. And you could always go back and add gems or sequins or something, but I haven't gotten those on the table for today, so I'm just going to leave it with dies and the embossing folder. So what do you think? Card number 2, same folder, sponge technique, and then just dressed up with some of the dies and a label. Okay, so that's number 2. Alright, number 3 for our technique for this folder. So once again, we've got our folder, okay, and this time we're going to ink our folder. So I've decided I'm going to ink this side. This is the side that it gets pressed into, that make it push out, and I'm going to ink that side with my crushed curry ink pad. So I'm just going to put this on a mess mat because it gets a little messy, but I'm just going to ink up the folder itself. Okay, I'm going to press this in to the whole folder and hopefully not get ink all over my hands. So this is definitely one to have your wet wipes handy so you can get the ink off your hands while you're still working, or make a quick trip and go wash your hands in the sink, but we're going to try to do this without making a mess. Okay, so if I ink that up, right, nice and wet with my ink. So, and then if I take my cardstock, okay, I can do it this way. I'm going to line that up on the line. Again, like I said, it doesn't matter with this folder, but I'm going to line up with the line, and then I'm going to close my folder. Okay, close my folder. Now if I take this and I go over to my die cutting machine and I were to emboss it, okay, if I were to emboss it, magic of television, I would come out with this panel. Look how bold that color and those flower imprints are. Okay, so I was able to color between my flowers with the ink on my folder. I have a little bit of that ink on my impression, but that's okay with me. And I have this beautiful panel to use for a card. Okay, so that's wet embossed folder technique. And I'm going to put a card together with that in just a minute. But while I've got my ink and my paper in here, here's another technique. Now this one we don't run it through our machine. So I inked my folder, I put my piece of cardstock in, and now I'm just going to use my hand and I'm just going to rub it. Okay, now obviously you're not going to get the same result as you would if you ran it through your machine, because you're not getting the pressure of the machine and you're not actually embossing it. But you can transfer the print to the paper. So I've done this with many of my folders in the past. So sometimes you get a very subtle print, sometimes you get a very bold print. You really want to give it some time and press it and hold it. Okay, let's see what we got. So I opened that up and look at that. I now have a printed panel. It's not embossed, but I have a printed panel. I've used my folder effectively like a stamp. So if you have a folder you love, there's another way to use it. Ink it up and stamp it. And now when I'm done, I'll just take this to my sink, rinse it off with water, dry it with a paper towel, and it's good to go. So don't worry about getting ink on your folders, okay? Alright, let me put that aside so I don't get ink on our projects. So let's go back. So I've got 2 more cards, right? 2 more cards to make for you. Let's go back and do this one first. So this one I'm going to mount on crushed curry. Okay, that's going to go on crushed curry. And I'm just going to go ahead and adhere that down. So I think that's a pretty bold way to make a colored background with our embossing folder. All right, I've got a 2-tone panel there. Okay, so now I've cut with my Stitch So Sweetly die, I've cut a label, and I've done that same wishing you every happiness. This time I've die cut the ferns, but I've done them in the white. I have another crushed curry flower, the one that's kind of open, and then I've got a set of these 3 crushed curry flowers in the tiny little triplet there. Okay, so I'm going to add these to my project. So again, I'm going to put my sentiment up on dimensionals. That's going to help me tuck my embellishments from my icon dies behind. Put that right there. I'm going to bring in my glue dots. I'm going to put the ferns on first. I think I'm going to put them going up this time. So one there, one over here, so like a duet of ferns. Okay, I'm going to add my flower to this top corner of my tag. Maybe, if I can get the glue dot on there. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to add this big open flower kind of right there, I think. Alright, press that down. And then I'm going to add these triplet of flowers. So I'm going to put a glue dot on the biggest one, and I'm going to put that down here. And then I'm going to put the next size one up here as like a little extra flower there, and then I'm going to put the little one on top of the biggest tiny die, right? The biggest tiny die, and just offset. So I've got flowers. This one I would think I would definitely add pearls or some rhinestones to, but again, I don't have them on the table, so there's our 3rd idea. Okay, and then my 4th idea is, right, this one we ran through, put on the folder and pressed it, but we didn't emboss it. So this one I am going to pop up on dimensionals, because this one's a very flat background, so I can just use my dimensionals to help me create a little lift to my card. I don't know what I would do without my dimensionals and my liquid glue. So, alright, so I'm going to put this on my card. I've got that stepped in. Now I've got a piece of black cardstock. This is just going to be like a paper ribbon. And I've got more of those tiny little flowers, and this time I have the bee. So this I'm just going to put right across here. So I haven't embossed it. I didn't want to kind of compete with the other flowers. I suppose I could have, because I didn't actually emboss that panel, but I'm just going to put it on flat. And yes, you could cut it down to size first, but I didn't. So, oh, and I know something else I forgot to do. I forgot to stamp my sentiment. So that might be fun. It's pretty flat. I think we'll be okay. You should always stamp your sentiment before you put it on with dimensionals, but I didn't. Alright, so I'm trimming along my edge here for my paper ribbon. Let's go ahead and do our sentiment next. So I'm going to stamp underneath here and cross my fingers that it goes on nice and flat. Life is better with a friend like you. Okay, so right here. Yay! Okay, good. There's that. Now we're going to add our bee. So I got my bee on a little tiny dimensional, and part of why I put that black paper ribbon on there is because I want the bee to stand out on the black cardstock. See how it makes the bee really pop with the black behind it? And then I've got these same 3 flowers that I've been using from the Iconic dies, the bees from the Iconic die 2, that I'm just going to make a triplet of flowers over here on my belly band. Just like that. So what do you think? Pretty cool, right? So we've done 4 different techniques with the same folder. All right, you can see 1 folder, 4 techniques, and 1 set of dies, 1 set of stamps. So I think that's pretty cool. So I hope you enjoyed this idea with using folders as your background and different ways you can utilize those folders. So remember, leave me comments, thumbs up if you're watching me on YouTube. All the information and details will be on the blog, so if you prefer written instructions, you can go there with my link and check out the instructions. And if you have any questions, leave them for me in the comments. And remember, if you're shopping for supplies, please consider shopping with me. I appreciate it, and I will be sure to send you a hand stamp thank you card along with a fun crafting kit. So I'll see you again soon. Happy stamping. Bye-bye.